Hello students, in today's lecture we would be studying about stored program control. Now what is stored program concept? This concept states that we would be storing a program which is a set of instructions into the memory of the computer, and the instructions would be executed automatically from the memory one by the processor. Now, carrying out the exchange control functions through such type of a program which is stored into the memory of the computer led to the nomenclature stored program control, the topic for today. Now, what were the advantages which were associated with stored program control which led to its incorporation in the exchange environment? The first, full-scale automation of the exchange functions was possible. And the second, we were able to introduce a variety of new services like automatic fault diagnosis, interactive human machine interfaces, and many more. SPC is now a standard feature in all the electronics exchanges. Two types of space division electronic switching systems, one using electromechanical switching network and the other using electronic switching network, are shown in this diagram, which is figure 4.1. Now here, the electromechanical switching system is also interfaced with SPC, and electronic switching system is also interfaced with SPC, and both of these qualify as electronic switching systems. In the last lecture, when we studied about the classification of switching systems, we studied that electromechanical exchange was different from the electronic exchange in the sense that electromechanical exchange did not incorporate any software in its control, but electronic does that. Now, the problem was we had already the electromechanical switching network into being. It was impossible or very expensive for us to change the entire exchange, so we interfaced stored program control with the already existent electromechanical switching network, and that qualified as an electronic system. And the newly incorporated electronic exchanges, of course, had stored program control as one of the important vital components. So figure 4.1 gives us the two types of space division electronic switching systems, one using the electromechanical switching network and the other using the electronic switching network. So till now we know that the stored program control basically is the concept where we store some instructions into the memory of the computer, and those instructions are automatically executed by the processor to control the exchange. Now, what are the various approaches of SPC? Let us come to that. Types or approaches of SPC. We have two approaches of stored program control. One, the centralized approach, and second is the distributed approach. Taking up the first one, centralized approach. The figure drawn here gives us a typical centralized SPC organization. Early electronic switching systems, which were developed around the period of 1970 and 75, used centralized approach. And in such type of the configuration, the control equipment is replaced by a single powerful processor. Now, this is the processor which we are talking about. A single powerful processor in such type of a configuration, which is called as centralized configuration, is used for controlling the exchange environment. And in this configuration, we may use one processor for redundancy purposes. What is redundancy? Redundancy in a system design can be defined as the system in which a component is duplicated so that if it fails, there will be a backup. So redundancy, we are duplicating the processor here so that if one processor fails, we have the other one to take up the charge. So under this dual or two processor architecture, we operated the centralized SPC. And when we came to the dual processor architecture or two processor architecture of the centralized SPC, we have three modes of operation under this. So students, we have begun with SPC. We have classified SPC under two approaches. The first one is the centralized and the second one is distributed. We are talking about centralized approach here. Centralized approach is the approach in which one single processor controls the entire exchange. And we have also discussed that for redundancy purposes, we add an additional processor. Now, when we add an additional processor under centralized approach, there are three ways, three modes into which this centralized SPC can be worked upon. What are the three modes? The standby mode, synchronous duplex mode, and the load sharing mode. So these three modes of operation come under centralized SPC organization. The first mode under centralized is standby mode, and figure 4.4 gives us the configuration. Standby mode of operation is the simplest of the dual processor configuration operations. Here, one processor is active and the other is on the standby, both hardware and software by. Now, if you look at the diagram, we have processor P1 and we have processor P2. Now, processor P1 is connected with the exchange environment through firmed lines. So this means this is the active processor. The processor which is connected with the exchange through firmed lines is the active processor. And processor P2, which is connected with the exchange environment through dotted lines, is on standby. Now, a very important requirement of this configuration is the ability of this processor, which is called the standby processor, to reconstitute the state of the exchange system when it takes over the control. Now, what is reconstituting the state of the exchange? That means it should be able to determine that which of the subscribers and trunks are busy or free, which of the paths are connected to the switching network, etc. when it has to come under role play. In small exchanges, this is possible because we can just scan the status signals. We have status signals into the exchange which tell us about the current status of the various signals in the exchange. So in small exchanges, this standby processor, whenever it has to take up the charge, it scans these status lines and comes into operation. In small exchanges, it is easy for the standby processor to do that because it takes a very less amount of time to reconstitute the total environment, because the calls which are handled by the small exchanges are very less. But in large exchanges, it is not possible to scan all the status signals within a reasonable amount of time. So what is the alternative here? Here the active processor copies the status of the system periodically, say after every 5 seconds or after every 10 seconds, into the secondary storage. Now, this is the secondary storage to which the active processor and the standby processor both are connected. Now, in large exchanges, this active processor P1 would be putting up the status periodically, copying up the status periodically into the secondary storage. And whenever a switchover would occur, the online processor loads the most recent update of this system status from the secondary storage and continues the operation. In this case, only the calls which changed status between the last update and the failure of the active processor are disturbed. That means if I say my active processor would be putting up the status after every 5 seconds, that means if those 5 seconds have just begun after the last update was done after 5 seconds and we are into the third second, the first second, second second, the status pertaining to those 2 seconds would not be registered by the other processor which would take up the charge. So we lose a small amount of calls just after the update. So we have this configuration which tells us about the standby dual processor configuration. Dual means two. Standby means one processor is active and the other is standby. and both of them are connected to the secondary storage. Now, active processor always takes charge of the exchange, and standby processor comes into picture only when the active processor fails. Now, that was the simplest mode of operation in the dual processor configuration. Coming to the second mode under centralized SPC, which is synchronous duplex mode. Synchronous duplex mode of operation is depicted in this diagram, figure 4.5. So we have two processors here. If you can look at the diagram, students, we have two processors, processor P1 and processor P2, and they are connected with one another. So in synchronous duplex mode of operation, hardware coupling is provided between the two processors, which execute the same set of instructions and compare the result continuously. Now this is the comparator. See, if you can look here, this is the comparator. That means processor P1 and processor P2 are coupled through a hardware, and that hardware is the comparator. The device is called the comparator. What is the function of the comparator? Comparator takes the input from both the processors, compares the inputs, and gives back the result. So, if a mismatch occurs, what would happen? Compare in idle conditions, processor P1 and processor P2. Processor P1 is handling the exchange environment. Processor P2 is getting the data from the exchange as processor P1 is getting. Exchange environment, processor P1 is getting the data, P2 is also. But active control of the exchange is done by P1 only. P2 is not controlling the exchange. We have a hardware device called the comparator, which is placed in between P1 and P2. Whatever the data is being processed by P1 is the same is being processed by P2, and the result of the processing is compared by the comparator. In idle conditions, the comparator's result should match. When the result matches, that means P1 and P2 are working fine. But if there is a mismatch, because same data we are getting, same input data should give same output. So no mismatch should be there in idle circumstances. Whenever there is no fault, there should not be any mismatch. But if a mismatch occurs, the either of the two processors is faulty. We have to identify the faulty processor, and that is identified within a few milliseconds. What happens when the system is operating normally? The two processors have the same data in the memories, as I have told you, at all times and simultaneously receive all information from the exchange. One of the processors actually controls the exchange, whereas the other one is synchronized. As just we have discussed about this, the synchronously operating configuration is this, and if the fault is detected by the comparator, we are saying that P1 and P2, the two processors here, they are decoupled, and a checkout program is run independently on each of the machines to determine which one is faulty. We are decoupling both the processors here. So you have to be very specific. You have to be very clear about this fact. Two processors, P1 and P2, are decoupled, and a checkout program is run independently on each of the machines to determine which one is faulty. The checkout program runs without disturbing the call processing, and this call processing is suspended temporarily. When a processor is taken out of service, the other processor operates independently. Which processor we are taking out? The one which we have identified as the faulty one. We decoupled two processors. Both the processors which are shown here are decoupled. A fault identification program is run in both the processors, and once the fault is identified in one of the processors, that is taken out for repair, and the other processor individually takes up the control of the exchange. And when the faulty processor is repaired and brought into service, the memory contents of the active processor are copied into its memory. We have individual memories here. M1 and M2, processor P1 and processor P2 have their individual memories. And what are we doing? We are, when the faulty processor, when we are repairing it and when we are bringing that processor into service again, the memory contents of the active processor which was actually controlling the exchange environment, are being copied into the memory, and it is brought into synchronous operation with the active processor, and the comparator is enabled again. So that again we can begin with the process of comparing and hence identification. Now, we have talked about the comparators resulting into a mismatch, and hence we have determined that a mismatch results because of some fault. But there are chances that this fault might have occurred because of a transient failure which does not show up when the checkout program was run. That means when processor P1 and P2 were decoupled and the checkout program was run into them, there was no indication about the failure. So, what can be done in that condition? There are three possibilities which we can undertake under this condition. We decoupled both the processors, we ran the program to identify the fault in both the processor, and no fault was identified. Both of the processors were into a good condition. So that means the mismatch which occurred was due to a fault which was transient in nature. So what could we do? We can take three possibilities here. First, we can continue with both the processors. Fault was transient and it might have occurred and gone by. But second, we can take out the active processor and continue with the other processor, or continue with the active processor and remove the other processor. Why? When I say strategy 1, we assume that the fault was transient and it may not reappear again. But strategy 2 and 3 are based on the hypothesis that if the fault was transient, it may impend into a permanent fault. So we need to thoroughly check about both the processors and then continue with the operation. Therefore, the processor that is taken out of service is subjected to extensive testing to identify a marginal failure. So that was the second configuration which we have discussed about, synchronous duplex operation under centralized SPC. And coming to the third, load sharing mode. Load sharing mode, we have processor P1 here, we have processor P2 here, and if you are able to see, both the processors are actually connected to the exchange environment. Both the processors here are actively controlling the calls. In a load sharing operation, an incoming call is assigned randomly or in a predetermined order, whatever the case is be, to any of the processor, which then handles the call right through its completion. Thus, both the processors are active simultaneously and share the load and the resources dynamically. So we have this figure where we have processor P1, which is controlling the exchange environment, processor P2 controlling the exchange environment, and both of them are connected with one another also. They have separate memories here for their data. Now, when they are connected with one another and when they are controlling the exchange, in unison, together are they controlling the exchange? That means they would be accessing the common resources together too. So there has to be some device which tells processor P1 that this resource, a particular resource, is being accessed at this point of time by processor P2. Suppose there is any resource R1. Processor P1 has accessed that resource R1, and after a few seconds, processor P2 also want to access the same. So there has to be some mechanism which tells processor P2 to wait until that resource is being freed by P1. So what is that device which would tell that? That is called as ED here, the exclusion device. Right? So what is this exclusion device? Exclusion device would tell the processors that which common resource is being accessed by which processor. And when we talk about the interprocessor link, there is an interprocessor link here through which the processors exchange information for mutual coordination, because both the processors are active simultaneously. So mutual coordination has to be there in between both the processors, and they should be able to verify the state of health of each other, so that whenever the any one processor fails, the other one is able to take the entire load of the exchange until the other processor is repaired and brought into service again. And the sharing of resources, of course, done by the device which is called as exclusion device. Under normal operation, each processor handles half of the calls. That is the process which is being followed. So centralized SPC, the first approach, which has three modes of operation, which we have discussed now, right? Now coming to the distributed approach, the second approach of the SPC. The figure shows us the dual chain distributed control here. I have this exchange environment. Now, what is the difference in between the distributed approach and the centralized approach? In centralized approach, we talked about single processor controlling the exchange environment. But in distributed approach, we have many processors which are controlling the exchange environment. How many processors? Because we divide the total working of the exchange into small tasks, and each task is being handled by one or two processors. How were we able to do that? When centralized approach came, the processors were very expensive, but with the advent of very low cost microprocessors and very large scale integration, such as PLAs, that is programmable logic arrays, and PLCs, programmable logic controllers, distributed SPC was easy to be implemented. So what is distributed SPC? Where we are distributing the control functions among many processors. How come we are able to do that? Because, because the availability of the processors and their cost was as per our requirements. Low cost and more availability. And this structure, of course, offers better availability and reliability than centralized SSD because there we had only one processor which was controlling all the functions of the exchange. Here we have many processors. So if any one of the processor would fail, the overall working of the exchange would not be hampered. One or two branches or two functions of the exchange would slow down or stop for a moment or so till the repair work is done and the processors are brought into service again. So better availability and reliability in centralized SPC. Now centralized SPC in distributed SPC. Sorry. Now distributed SPC, we can have horizontal distribution and vertical distribution. Two modes, two types under which we can distribute it: horizontal and vertical. When I say horizontal, horizontal is like this. I have all the functions in all the blocks which are handled by one processor, like event monitoring and distribution of chain 1 and chain 2 and so on are handled by all the event monitoring and distribution functions of all the sections is handled by one computer. Similarly, all the call processing is handled by the other computer and so on. This is horizontal distribution. Horizontal and vertical means for one chain, EMNDP, CP, and ONMP, that is event monitoring and distribution, call processing, operation and maintenance, is being handled by one processor. So we are going to divide, we are going to distribute the work either vertically or horizontally, as the case may be, right? So in both the schemes, you would be actually dividing the work among various computers which are now available. The structure becomes modular. Means the structure would be working in modules, and it would be easy for us to add a module or to take out a module as the requirement is. So as we said, the arrangement is modular, right? So that was all about SPC. SPC is stored program concept or stored program control, where we talked about the various approaches. The various approaches, the centralized, where one computer controls, the distributed, where many computers are there for the control purposes. Under centralized SPC, we have three modes: standby mode, synchronous duplex mode, and load sharing mode. And under distributed, we have two: horizontal decomposition and vertical decomposition. I hope the lecture is clear, and that is all for today. Thank you.